Yep, I'm
I
ready.
think
Are
so.
you gonna
SHockrolla.
introduce our SHockrolla in an interesting and meaningful fashion, Droid?
No.
Okay.
I was waiting for it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the D20 campaign. And today's episode, we are going to be doing the Shockroll tournament. It's going to be a large portion of just me talking, because this is going to be a descriptive element, and it's basically just going to be a little bit of theming, a little bit of world building. And I thought it might be fun for the players. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I kind of enjoy this sort of stuff.
I figured if Droid put in the time to make up his own sport, we better give him the time to listen to it.
As I said, like, part of being a DM is being a performer. You have to enjoy talking to people about this. You have to enjoy talking at people and describing things. And then, like, I have to say, like, I didn't make up this sport just for this. This sport was actually in a short story I wrote when I was about 14.
Oh, cool.
So this sport has a bit of a history to it. So it's one of my little pets. It's a bit like a lot of people love the idea of Quidditch. I love the idea of SHockrolla. I love the idea of this sort of sport.
Okay.
So
I'm ready for your sport here, and I wasn't able to get myself a pink drink, but I do have a distinctly green drink, which I'm enjoying as my pretty drink, while Nets
What is
watches
it? Oh,
his.
What are you
Is it?
drinking?
You really
Absinthe.
want to know?
You have absinthe?
No, I wish I had absinthe.
Oh.
I've
Oh.
got mint pears with a little bit of dark rum and maple syrup.
Ooh.
It is very nice, actually.
okay, so the crowd in Amnesia starts to get a little bit noisier as the start of the tournament rolls around, and you all find yourselves basically crowded around, or at least with a reasonable view of the 3D display. And the 3D display is showing these two gentlemen sitting behind the bar with a third gentleman sitting next to them. One second. And it starts. There's the thrum of music, and the bearded announcer goes, "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 64th season of the Finari Shockroller Championships and this first tournament. This tournament here at Cherrick, the Cherrick Invitational. Today we've got 4 teams fighting it out across 3 matches to see who's going to take home the league points today. And this tournament, it seems like it's going to be one hell of a knock-up. Last year at this same tournament, the Ipton Unstoppables faced the Cherrick Bull Riders in the finals, and it led to the first time in Shockrolla history where an entire team got sent off on yellow cards at the same time. The most vicious match we have ever seen. And then these two teams went on to face each other against each other in the final match of the season, and the Cherrick Bull Riders came home with the cup. But it looks like it's going to be an interesting change-up this season, don't you think, Rick? Well, Morty.
That was great.
Well, yeah, plagiarism. Well, Morty, it seems like the Ipton Ensembles have completely changed up their starting lineup this year, and the Bull Riders are sticking with the same old folks. It seems like it's going to be age against fresh blood, and it seems like it's going to be one hell of a tournament. That's right, Rick. And today here we have Darren Imari. He's one of the ex-players of the Cherrick Bulls. He's one of the 4 attacking players, and he's going to be giving us all the play-by-play rundowns, because our first match is between the Ipton Unstoppables and the Cherrick Bull Riders. And there's a huge amount of betting going on in the bar. There's people handing slips of paper, credit chits. There's a couple of credit readers going around. People are striking up deals for everything from a couple of credits or a drink at the bar, all the way up to, a few of you can probably spot some of the local sort of gang leaders betting hundreds of thousands of credits, millions of credits on the upcoming match between the Cherrick Bull Riders and the Ipton Unstoppables. In the meantime, like, you're all settling in with your drinks. and you have the opportunity to kind of get involved in a little bit of gambling, have a chat with the people around you, push a few people here and there. What are you guys up to as the tournament begins?
I haven't
I
gotten a drink yet, so I guess I'll look at what's on offer.
So over at the bar, you've got the standard array of different alcohols. You've got grain alcohols, and you've got spirits, you've got beers and lagers. You've got a couple of ales. You've got a couple of interesting things. You've also got a couple of chem-laced stuff. You've got some stuff that's laced with long-term space travel chemicals, which are sort of quite noxious drinks. But you've got a decent array of different drinks. You've got some cocktails and things going on, as well as the standard sort of like carbonated beverages and carbonated sodas, waters, and you could even probably get a hot chocolate if you really wanted one.
I guess I'll take some water then.
I assume they
Okay.
have coffee for the.
Yep, there's got coffee.
I'll have the blackest, strongest, most paint-peeling coffee they have.
Okay, so Vagabond gets a dirty look as he orders himself a water, and Bomber, Snarly Wolf gets a dirty look as he orders himself a water, and
No one likes
Bomber,
water.
and Bomber gets himself something that's simply known as the Black Hole, and the Black Hole is quad-fried black coffee beans. It's probably about 50% coffee bean, 50% water. You probably have to chew it rather than drink it, but but you asked for the strongest coffee they did.
And it gets the job done.
Oh yeah, it certainly gets the job done.
Well, looks like that's the last of Bomber.
Yeah, he's got alcohol, he's got cocaine, space cocaine,
And massive
he's
amounts of
got
caffeine.
let's just hope he uses the washroom here, because I don't want to use it back at the house after he's been done in it tonight. Wow.
Oh yeah, we only have one washroom. Apparently.
So, meanwhile, over on the 3D display, the teams are being trotted out in front of people, and it's a 12-person team. And 6 people play in the arena at the same time. You have the forward attacker and wing attacker who work together. You have the grip center who works the center of the cube. You've got the grip back and the rear attacker. And then you've got the guardian who guards the score zone. And it's standard for the forward attackers to work hand hooks, and for the centers and the grips to work 4-foot hook poles, and for the guardian and the rear defense to work 6-foot hook poles. And this is what they show as the teams kind of walk past, wearing semi-armored spacesuits with wide plexiglass centers, so they've got a big field of vision. There's a small camera fixed to the side of each helmet. The suits aren't fully armored, but they're lightly armored. They're armored at the ankles. They're armored at the shoulders. They've got spinal armor. They've got armor across the chest. They've got armor around the knees to protect the joints. They've got armor coming down over the hips. But for the most part, the emphasis is on flexibility. And the Cherrick team is pretty much as expected. The guys wear quite light-colored suits for easy sort of vision, so they're easy to see when they're playing. But across the chest, they have their name emblazoned. They have sponsors going down the side, and they come out with their chosen sort of hooks and things. The Cherrick team is pretty much as expected, and as it goes down the line, it kind of calls out their names. The announcers call out each player's name. And they talk about them being a forward attacker on the first bench, or a forward attacker on the starting team, and they go through the different people. And the Cherrick team is pretty much as expected. But when it comes over to the Ipton team, there's a lot of talk going around the bar, and there's talk on the 3D screen as they announce the Ipton team from the announcers, Morton, Rick, and from Darren. As they talk about the fact that in the Ipton team, rather than having the forward attacker and wing attacker with 2 hooks, 4-foot hooks for the center grip and the rear attacker, and then 6-foot hooks for the grip back and the guardian, the wing attacker, the forward attacker, the grip center, and the grip back all have two-hand hooks rather than and the rear attacker and the guardian both have 4-foot hooks, so they're completely setting aside the idea of 6-foot hook poles, and they're going with multi-hooks instead. And there's nothing in the rules against it, but it's not the way things have been done for a long time. It's not considered standard. Now, when I say hooks, what I mean is if I can copy it and paste it properly, because I just copied the link that was already in there. They're not full curved hooks. They're more like boat hooks. They're more like jab hooks, so that they can hook onto things and release things quickly, because you don't want to get yourself tangled up into the grid as you're working. And as it comes to the grid, I'm going to use Toad's image here with his semi-naked man.
You're actually going to use my image? I made that in 3D.
Yep.
It's sad.
The grid is suspended in space, and it glows slightly. And the reason it glows slightly is so that the different areas of the grid can be marked out, so that it's easier to see for the people watching. And they go on to talk about the different sort of tactics and things that are being employed, and the fact that Ipton is choosing an entirely new idea with going with multi-hooks. So many people going with multi-hooks rather than going with hook staffs. And they talk about the advantages and the disadvantages, and Mort is blathering away going, well, of course, with the 10-foot gaps between the poles and the massive amount of space, you can't reach from pole to pole with your hands. So with double hooks, you're relying on pushing yourself off from moving from pole to pole in angles. And of course, as everyone knows, if you leave the cube, then you are instantly out for the rest of that quarter. That means that with so many people with double hand hooks, the likelihood of someone accidentally getting knocked out or accidentally losing their angle and being unable to grip onto a pole and ending up outside of the cube is very high, so they're going to be at a high risk of losing players each quarter. And he goes on to talk about how the 4-foot poles are preferred for the midfielders and the 6-foot poles for the backfielders, because it gives you a better chance of pulling the right angle. With the hand hooks, you've got to rely on whatever angle you're given, because whatever pole you can reach is the pole you can reach. With the 6-foot poles, you can actually reach clean across the spaces, which means you can pull yourself at pretty much any angle. So the Ipton team is going to be going for what seems to be a very low mobility, but a very high effectiveness when they actually get close enough to the disc to work. And in the meantime, Rick and Darren seem to be having a conversation completely separate. Rick's basically talking to Darren about the fact that Darren was one of the premier scorers when he was playing for the Cherrick Bulls, and that Darren has 4 season championships to his name. And he goes, well Darren, I see you've been kind of coming back out of retirement as a coach at the moment. And Darren's just chatting away. He's not massively interested in this pre-roll because it's all been seen before. And so the match is about to start, and the team members are shown on the 3D display as they fly out. They talk about the different things, the fact that the suit arm has been upgraded this year. Every player is given a mag grapple. Use of the mag grapple means instant disqualification for that player, but the mag grapple is basically used if they get knocked out and they are sailing away from the arena without any form of recovery available. And they have a small mag grapple. They talk about the fact that they have a oxygen vent stabilization system, so they can stabilize themselves if they get knocked out of the cube. And they also have a short-range spatial tracker on them as well, in case they start to get lost if they do get knocked out of the cube. It talks about the fact that the faceplate helmet, the faceplate on the helmet has been reinforced this year because in last year's season, several people had their faceplates broken, which resulted in multiple injuries and several deaths. Of course, it's illegal to strike someone on the helmet. It's also illegal to use your hook to grab hold of limbs or to hook onto other people. So there's a little bit of a kind of, why do we need this sort of thing? But people break the rules all the time, so it has to be done. And so the 2 teams are sailing out to the cube and setting themselves up. And the cube is lit in a nice white. And as they reach the cube, the Cheric team starts on one side of the cube, and one of their mini cubes, one of the little cubes within the larger cube, turns to the Cheric team color, which is dark red. And on the other side, as the Ipton Unstoppables reach their side of the cube, one of the inner cubes near their side of the cube turns to a light blue, which is their color. And so they've set up the scoring zones, and they've set themselves up, and they start moving through the cube. They move through the cube quite gracefully, but also kind of quite jarringly, in that they hook onto the bars, they tug, they sail through the cubes, through the gaps in the cube, and then they use a small pair of hooks on the base of their boots, and they use the either hook pole or the hooks in their hands to hook themselves onto bars. And you find themselves coming to quite jarring stops. You think that coming to a stop from sailing quite fast, you're probably actually going to take quite a lot of impact to your shoulders. Several of them do spins around poles to slow themselves down and things. And so they bring themselves into resting position, spread through the cube, with the grip back protecting or sort of marking the front attacker, and with the rear attacker marking the wing attacker. The two center grips marking each other, and the Guardians are hooking themselves on, basically hovering in the center of the score zones. And so the match is starting to get sort of set up, and betting seems to be dying down. People seem to be sort of settling in to watch the match. There's a lot of braying and a couple of people shoving each other out of the way because someone's blocking the telly. But for the most part, it's kind of settling down, ready for the match. What are you guys up to?
Is there a balcony in this place?
There's a raised section around the bar, and there's a couple of additional sort of further raised sections. So not quite a balcony, but you go up to the bar, and then you go up further to the right and left, and you come up to further raised sections on the right and the left of the bar.
I want to find myself. Oh, go ahead, Vagabond.
How big is this quad cube?
The display cube.
Yeah, the display cube.
It's cuboid. It's 10 foot wide by 4 foot tall by 4 foot deep. Roughly. I think it was 8.5 foot wide by 4 foot tall, 4 foot deep. Think of it like a 16 by 8 cinema display. It's a pretty decent cinema display, basically, which is why this bar is so popular tonight.
So I'm going to ask Amanda whether she wants to stay down here on the floor to watch this, or whether she wants to get a vantage point from one of the upper seated positions where it may be a little less noisy.
Amanda's perfectly happy to go up to one of the seated positions with you. She's giggling slightly, and she kind of like hooks herself onto you and kind of like half hangs off you as you head on up to one of the raised areas. She's having a right old deal at the fact that essentially you're being the girl, because you're wanting to go to the quiet places, you're having the pink drinks, and she's just enjoying herself thoroughly that you're the girl and she's the guy, and she's snickering away to herself quite happily. And
while she grabs onto me, because I'm a smaller gentleman, very string bean from working in low gravity, I'm like, oh, so I've been called a pole before, but apparently you're wanting to start playing SHockrolla early. And then start walking up to the upper thing with her. So you head up to one of the upper balconies. It's much quieter up there. Most people are sort of crowding around the display, but it's reasonably good view from up here because you're sort of looking over the top of people to see into the 3D display. There's some groups of people settled about. There's a group of 6 people sitting at a table in the corner. They're reasonably well dressed, quite young. They probably some of the kind of upper class people. What now? What am I missing? Savrock, you bastard.
Yeah.
What?
I'm just being a dick.
He's sending me private messages.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
How much of a dick is he being?
Quite a bit of a dick, but it's
that's
fine.
like a level 8 dick here.
Yeah, level 8
That's
dick,
what I said.
definitely.
That's what I said.
I'm a level 8 dick. Forget my wizard score, I'm a level 8 dick.
So, meanwhile, sort of like Bomber and Vagabond are currently hanging out by the bar. Bomber's getting unsloshed, I suppose the term would be, by drinking massive amounts of coffee and taking cocaine. It seems to be that Bomber has this kind of death wish because he seems to be imbibing every kind of chemical substance he can get his hands on. He's going to be drinking Drano next.
Nope. As
Yep.
long as not yet. Give it another man rape.
What did you
And
draw me as? A gecko? Sorry, I'm just looking at his little brown drawing over here that almost blends into the table. Nets
Yep.
plus Amanda over here.
That's actually a really good drawing. I'm actually impressed.
It's Yoshi. Dude, it's Yoshi and Princess Peach, dude.
No,
With goggles.
That's Peach?
No. It's
Not
Yoshi. It's Yoshi and Toadette. With hair things. It's Yoshi and Toadette.
Oh,
With handlebars.
Oh, okay. So, what would be a good idea for you guys to do, sort of while you're listening to the next bit of description of the Shockrolla tournament, is to prepare a initiative score and to prepare your attack bonuses and your damage for what you're going to be fighting with in a bar brawl.
and you have
Someone's getting mad at a Shockrolla tournament.
a nice way to transition us out of this episode so we can start the next episode right at the thingamajig?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I have a pre-prepared plan of how we're going to basically end the Shockrolla and go into the fight.
No, I dropped my thing.
Caught it.
Thank you. Oh, I'm gonna keep that roll then that you caught. Oh, it fell over. Okay, I'll reroll.
I got an 18. Yay.
That's what I would have
Make sure you're writing down your initiative scores and getting your combat modifiers ready. So, over on the Shockrolla tournament, the referee or the sort of ref team rolls out into the tournament cube, and with them they carry the shock disc, which is a lit edge disc with multiple holes through it, which is used to play the game. They take it into the center and they leave it hovering in the center of the Shockrolla cube, and it plays 3 tones and the game begins. Straight away, all 6 members of each team are moving like bolts of lightning through the cube. Hooks crack into the glowing bars and they are dragging themselves through the cube very rapidly. There's jarring impacts as their hooks latch on and they spin around attached to the bars. Their feet clang into the bars and the center grips meet each other in the center to basically try and get hold of the disc. Ipton's center grip sails forwards. He hooks his hook into the disc, spins in the center of the cube, and plants both feet on the armored chest of the Cherrick Bull Rider center grip, kicks off, sending the guy sailing backwards with his hooks held out to try and catch hold of one of the, or with his 4-foot hook pole held out to try and catch hold of one of the bars. Meanwhile, Ipton's center grip is sailing back towards Ipton's goal with the disc hooked lightly on his on one of his 2 hooks. He spins round a bar, managing to catch it with his free hook, and whips the disc across the arena. Meanwhile, there are some other scuffles going on as different members of the team try and move through the cube, are getting blocked or getting their paths disrupted. Eventually, the disc sails through to the top right corner of the cube near the Cherrick goal, and the forward attacker and the grip back of the 2 teams go at each other. There's a lot of rapid movement. The disc is starting to be thrown. The different members of the team are all converging on the area into different areas, and suddenly the disc starts whipping from player to player rapidly as each player of the Ipton team catches it on one of his 2 hooks, then uses his other hand hook to drag himself in a different direction on one of the bars and whip the disc off in another direction. And it seems like the Cherrick Bull Riders are just being run round in circles now, with the disc moving so rapidly and the Ipton team working together so well. Their disc is going from player to player, and the announcers are barely able to keep up. The main announcer, Mort, is just rattling off names as the disc goes from person to person as the players get closer and closer together. Very quickly, the players are occupying barely a 30-foot by 30-foot by 30-foot area, and the disc is just whipping between them. One of the Ipton forward attackers, or one of the Ipton attackers, ends up in a hook lock where their hooks get tangled with one of the defenders from the Cherrick Bull Riders. But in the meantime, while they're so busy and getting ground up and hooked up and the screen focuses on them, there's suddenly a roar from the 3D display cinematic as the Cherrick Bull Riders goal goes black for a second, and you see that the Ipton rear attacker, one of the people who's normally in a defensive role, is actually on the other side of the Cherrick Bull Riders score zone with the disc hanging loosely from one of his hooks. And they actually have to roll back and replay as the rear attacker actually moves his way around the outside of the cube unnoticed by the Cherrick Bull Rider team and actually catches a disc halfway through and flicks it through the Cherrick Bull Riders goal. And this is all going on. And it all goes on rapidly, going backwards and forwards. Almost immediately, the game restarts again with the disc being returned to the center, and the game starts off again. And again, the teams are moving through the cube rapidly. Hooks are flicking backwards and forwards. And then the game comes to an abrupt stop as the announcer hisses through his teeth. And basically, the whole cube flashes red for a second. And they roll back and they show a small portion of the cube where two of the defenders are going at each other, and one of the defenders is trying to get past the other one of the Cherrick defenders is trying to get past one of the Ipton defenders, and as the Cherrick defender slips past him inside the same cube, the Ipton defender hooks onto his armored boot with the hand hook. And this brings the game to a grinding halt for a second. Yep. This brings the game to a grinding halt for a second, and the Ipton player is basically booed out of the cube by the watchers in the bar and by the watchers on the 3D cinemat. And he's forced to leave the cube for this quarter because he has breached one of the red card fouls, and he's not going to be allowed back onto the match until the next quarter starts. So now with Ipton down by one team member, suddenly the impetus starts to sway back towards the Cherrick Bulls, and the disc starts flicking about again almost immediately once the guys left the cube. The announcer starts rattling off names left, right, and center, and very soon the Cherrick Bull Riders have pulled 2-1 ahead of the Ipton as that quarter comes to a close. So meanwhile, at the bar, the tensions have started to bubble and fizz slightly. There's been a few sort of yelled arguments over cheating and inappropriate play, and the two groups of supporters of the two different teams are starting to become a little bit more obvious as they start to kind of divide themselves up.
It's like soccer.
What's the main? Who's the favorite team in this bar? I should ask.
In this bar, it seems to be that the majority of people are rooting for the Ipton Unstoppables. Now, you are on the planet Ipton, so it's not necessarily to be too surprising. But then most planets have multiple teams. The Ipton Unstoppables are the main team from Ipton. There's also the Ipton Racers, and there's also a team run by the Freedom Initiative on Ipton, which is simply called Freedom Ipton. But neither of those teams have shown up in the season yet because it's the start of the season. So at the moment, like the Ipton Unstoppables seem to be the favourite going forward.
Okay. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how sober am I?
You've been drinking black coffee now for probably, 8 minutes? 10 minutes? So you've got 10 minutes worth of extremely black breakfast coffee.
Okay, so I'm starting to feel less like a box of assholes.
Still look like one, though.
I mean, never change that. Never change that.
So, as the game kind of rolls into the second quarter and the game continues along the same sort of path. The Ipton team has brought in a couple of new members, and it continues along. Meanwhile, up on the balcony where Toad is, the 6 young gentlemen in the corner are starting to get a little bit rowdy, shall we say. And they're starting to make some crude jokes and to sort of point and chuckle. They seem to be directing some of their amusement at the unmanly Mr. Neats and his rather scrappy date.
Are you gonna be a man, or are you gonna let her continue having the balls?
I'm just wondering whether I ignore them, or I don't think Neats is the one that is just going to ignore them. I don't think that's in his character. So Neats is going to stand up, spin around, holding his very pretty sparkly pink drink.
Wait, are you doing a 180 or a 360? Because if you're doing a pirouette, you gotta... Okay.
Because I'm staring back at these guys. Okay? So holding my drink in one hand. Okay, let's grab my glass. So holding my drink and pointing with my other finger. I'm like, you better watch your tongues, or I'm going to walk myself over with my very pretty pink dick.
Pink dick?
Shut up.
What?
Pink drink. I'm going to walk over my very pretty pink drink and shove it right up your anus. And that's not a reference to the planet.
So, meanwhile, the tournament's going on in the background, but the tensions have started to run high. And as the sort of second quarter of the game rolls on, there's a little bit of disconsolate and snarky grumbling from the young men in the corner. Most of them probably aren't older than 20, to be fair. Most of them are quite... they're young lads, but they're dressed moderately nicely for the slums. They're obviously from the center slums. They're obviously from the slightly wealthier part of the slums. And so as the sort of the SHockrolla competition, the second quarter rolls on towards the end, Ipton pull forwards, and Ipton are now 2-2. They're drawn up nice and tight with the Czech Bull Riders, and the tensions are riding high. And as kind of like the third half starts, the klaxon sounds. A SHockrolla disc sails through the air and crashes into Blaster Toad's table. And with that shocking kind of, as a SHockrolla disc smashes across the table that him and Amanda are sitting at, the drinks go flying. Toad gets covered in sticky pink sweet juice. With the idea of Toad getting covered in sticky things and Amanda looking very shocked, we are going to call this episode an end. And we are going to go into a little bit of a combat tutorial-esque situation in our next episode.